Hello, hello, and welcome to my book cover design talk. This is just a real quick overview of what goes into book cover design, why it's important to have book cover design, some important elements to think about when thinking about your book cover design. So yeah, let's get started. So if you don't know me, my name is Sharon. I've been a graphic designer and a website designer for over 20 years. I'm a gold medal book design winner, also a silver winner. I've designed 50 plus book covers. I'm also a stay-at-home mom and yes, obsessed with coffee, who isn't? But yeah, that's just a little bit about me. So I'm going to get right into talking about why book cover design is important. I know you've worked really, really hard on creating the inside of your book, and now is the time to let people know out in the world what your book is about with your cover. So why is book cover design really important? Well, one, it lets the reader know your book is professionally done and worth their time in reading. Nobody wants to pick up a book that looks like your cousin did the cover, and that kind of reflects what the inside is going to be about as well. So they're really not going to waste their time if it doesn't look like it was professionally done. It's also able to communicate the main message of your book effectively. As you can see with the left book cover, this book, if you looked at the first side, it looks like The Baby Catcher Gate might be about babies. And it looks like maybe a baby education book, perhaps. However, that's not what the book is about at all. When I went to talk with the author, it's actually a story about a 13-year-old who has this supernatural vision of a baby gate in heaven, and that is where we came up with the cover. So it's a much more coming of age story with a really interesting vision in it. So the new cover that we did on the right, it more accurately reflects what the book is about and sends the right message to her audience. It also is your book cover is your number one marketing tool. Like I said, if it is effectively explaining what your book is about, that is going to be the best way to market what's inside the book. Okay, I'm going to show you a couple before and after. So this is a before and after. This author is actually already good at kind of coming up with concepts on his own. So he did this mock-up for me. This was not his final design, but he did a mock-up for me of what he was thinking of. And this just kind of shows like the transformation that can have when you do something kind of DIY and then do it professionally. So you can see from the cover on the right, what is happening there is it's creating intrigue with some unique design elements that are happening. It gives hints to a character that's in the story. It gives hints to the duality between the good and the evil that it talks about there. And that strong contrast with the color division. So it really creates kind of a mystery and intrigue, which is what we want with book cover design. We want them to want to know more. We don't want to spell everything out for them. We want them to be curious. So for this next one, also shows kind of a very DIY with some clip art and what that transition, especially with children's books, I think clip art can kind of be the default of like what clip arty, children's books should look like. However, when you see the book on the right, you can see that this book is actually not for kids, it's for educators or parents. I think is what it's for parents or homeschool parents. But this more accurately communicates who this book is for. You can see that it has bright colors, fun fonts, that gives the genre as well. So the genre fits, the educational style fits, and those professional photos and design just transform this book by leaps and bounds. So I'm going to go over kind of the few points of an effective book cover design, which should reflect the genre, number one. It should connect your reader emotionally to the story. It should be easy to read. It should not try to tell the whole story in one image. And it should have high quality photographs or imagery. So number one, it should reflect the genre. So I want you to do some research into the genre that you're writing about, because each genre has its own kind of theme or look to it, a standard look that it has. So if you go to Amazon and you type in the theme that you are, or the genre that you are going to be writing for, you'll notice the top books that show up. So I want you to look at those top books. I want you to notice the style. I want you to notice the photographs, or if there's no photographs, if it's mostly type, like some of these do have mostly type coming down the front of it. The kind of colors, are they really bright colors? Are they really neutral colors? Is it more scripty fonts? Is it bolder fonts? I want you to look at what a part of the designs, and like this one, it does have a variety, but kind of get an overall theme of like, okay, this is kind of the look that all of them are kind of leaning towards. And so that will give you an idea of what the genre looks like. I mean, if you can imagine something that's extremely different from this genre, like a fantasy book. A fantasy book would look extremely odd in a self-help section, right? You would know immediately that that book did not belong in that genre. So we want to make sure that we are creating a book cover that fits that genre, but also stands out as well. So here are some examples of different book cover designs for each genre. You can see the children's educational, obviously has just more fun, bright colors, children's toys, those kind of things. A poetry book. Poetry books can be really abstract, which I love doing poetry books just because you can get really creative with those. They don't have to be so literal. They can be more abstract in thought. They can have really different fonts. They tend to be very simple, but powerful. Historical fantasy, you can get really creative there. You can see that the fonts would match the time period that it's referring to. Certain elements besides the fonts, but what the clothes are wearing, those kind of things all kind of hint towards a historical time period. Women's biographies tend to have the author on the cover. They don't have to have the author on the cover, but it is a good thing just because your face is extremely unique. And what makes you stand out is obviously your story and your face. So I do encourage people, if you do have an autobiographical story, to put your picture on the cover. However, there are autobiographies that you can get creative with that don't have the author on the cover. So just think about your options there. Fantasy or dark fantasy, obviously those tend to be much more illustrative in nature. They kind of tell a story on the cover and really kind of grab you in with really interesting illustrations or graphics there. Number two is you're going to connect your reader emotionally to the story. And I don't think a lot of people think about this when they're thinking about their book cover design. But instead of thinking, oh, I have to put everything that the book is about onto the cover, what we really want to do is just create an emotion or a feeling that's going to connect you to it and make you want to read the book. So I like this example. Again, this author, she has some design background already. So she did a mock-up of what she was thinking. And my authors do not have to do this, but this particular author already had a design background, and so she was able to put this together. So her title was Once Upon a Backpack, and it's a red backpack. So she wanted to make sure there was a red backpack, and it was on telling the story of a journey. So when I probed her a little bit, talking about, okay, so what is the story about? She told me that the story is actually about a young woman, and this is her journey, and it's kind of a dark journey that she has to go through. And I'm hearing all this, and I said, well, what about if we put the character on the cover? So we put the character on the cover, and as you can see from the left, the backpack that's on the ground is a much more static picture. It doesn't really evoke any emotion. It just kind of looks like a backpack sitting on the floor. There's no story there. There's no emotion there. It just kind of feels flat. Whereas the book cover on the right when you see a woman with the jacket and the backpack on, you know she's on a journey. The darker colors, the kind of rugged texture that's on there shows that this is going to be a dark, rugged journey that she's on. This is not like a happy-go-lucky story. So you get that feeling all through all of those elements that work together. And we didn't have to put everything about the book in it. We just put those elements on it. So some other ways you can connect emotionally are creating, like, you've got other words that you can think of. You can think of beauty, show something beautiful. You could show something surprising or shocking or horror. You can put something that's intriguing or just even thoughtful, creating a thought. You can use humans to communicate emotion. Humans do communicate emotion really well and really effectively. You don't have to use human faces. Sometimes you can use part of a face. You can use hands. You can use the back of someone, but those really do connect emotionally really well. You can also use, like I said, colors, fonts, and textures to set that mood. Number 3, we're going to say is easy to read. And I know when people think of designing their cover, they want to get really creative and just put all the creative fonts on there. However, if your reader cannot read the title, it is going to be passed up. So the title must be easy to read, and especially think about it being easy to read in small situations like being on Amazon in a thumbnail. So zoom out, look at your cover small, and make sure that you can still read it, and ask people, can you read this? The imagery needs to be very clear, nothing jumbled, strong contrast of colors between the background and the foreground. As you can see with this title, we have the blue contrasts really well with the white, so that white type pops off the page. You also want to follow the text as a hierarchy of importance. So obviously this might seem like a no-duh, but I know a lot of people want their author name to be the biggest name. And if you were someone who was like a big author where the name is the most important thing, like Stephen King, who often has his name is the biggest part of the cover, because anybody who knows Stephen King just knows it's a Stephen King book, I just need to buy it. However, when you're not Stephen King, the title of your book should be the largest part. Then your subtitle should be the second largest. And then the author name could be the same as the subtitle, but often smaller. But it will still stand out, don't worry. As you can see with this one, the author name still stands out. We have that high contrast, and it's separated from the title, so it does draw your name down, it draws your eyes down to that name. Okay, number 4, we're not going to overdo it. So remember, our goal is not to tell the entire story in one image. It is to capture their attention and entice them to read more. We want them to pick up the book and read the back, and that's going to get them to want to read more. So how do we do this? We keep the imagery cohesive by not adding too much into one photo. I often hear, can you add this element with this element with this element with this element? And can we put all those together? And that just ends up looking like a collage mess. So usually one photo or a combination of 2 photos together that work really well together can work. However, we want to make sure it stays simple as much as possible so that it looks cohesive. We don't want it to look like it was Photoshop clip and paste, clip and paste. It just tends to look tacky. So a nice one cohesive photo is the most professional looking. Allow for white space, which allows for the eye to focus on what's important. So white space just means, it doesn't literally mean white. It just means the areas that don't have text or specific imagery in it. So what this does is if we don't have all the areas of the page full of something, it allows our eyes to rest in those areas and focus in on what's important, which is the headline and the main imagery. And that's what we want them to focus on. Only use 1 to 2 different fonts on your cover, unless your cover is like supposed to be super artistic and it's supposed to be out there and crazy. I want you to keep it to 1 to 2 different fonts at max. Also keep your colors cohesive. Make sure that the colors all go together. We're not doing super crazy color. It's just going to hurt the eyes. We don't want to hurt people's eyes. We want them to enjoy looking at it. All right, number 5 is you need high quality images or photographs. And when I say high quality images, we are purchasing stock photography, not using images that we find on Google search. I don't know if everyone knows this, but that is illegal. I know it's really easy to search on Google for images and think that those are accessible because they're on the internet. However, they are not legal to use as your own for commercial use. So you are going to want to go to a stock photography website. If you are doing this on your own, that is how you purchase high quality photos. You're going to use attractive photos that are pleasing to your ideal audience. So picking out stock photography is a skill in itself. So we want to also make sure that it's not a cheesy photo, but we want to make sure that it is attractive, not just because it's a stock photo and it's a professional photo, but it's actually a attractive photo. When do you need an illustrator? So sometimes people come to me and have these very, very, very specific ideas in mind of characters and scene and setting and clothing and all that kind of things. That might be when you need an illustrator. So these tend to be in the fantasy genre where there's specific characters and maybe it's going to be a series, those kind of things. I would encourage you to maybe seek out an illustrator. So as a book cover designer, I don't illustrate, but I use stock photography and graphics and use those. But if you need something very, very specific, I would say use an illustrator. There are some autobiographical genres where we talked about this, where you use the author photo. I just want to kind of show you some examples of what we can do with a photo to make it look more artistic as an art book cover, especially if it has something to do with the message of your book. As you can see with Amanda's book cover, the silent no longer has the tape over her mouth because it has a lot to do with her feeling like she was silenced. And the book on the right, which is The Girl Behind the Smile, Natalie's has the butterfly. She really wanted to show the transition from dark to light and how she transformed, and that butterfly really represented to her transformation. And so for the photo, we also showed that dark to light and even some coloring in there of her transition from dark to light. Some tips for getting professional headshots. So if you are going to get some professional headshots, and I do recommend everybody get professional headshots, even if you're not going to be on the cover, for your back cover photo, for promotions, for marketing, get professional headshots taken. I want you to find a headshot professional photographer. They are specific to doing headshots. I want you to look at their portfolio first before you hire them. I know a lot of people just hire their friends because they're friends, but really look at their portfolio and say, can I see myself liking these photos in the same situation? Remember, there's no harsh shadows. We want even lighting on the face. We don't want a big black line that goes across our face because we're in a shadow of a tree or something. It needs to be very high resolution for print. It's not the same as web. It needs to be crisp and clear imagery, and have the photographer leave room either above or to the side for text. So your next steps are, you're going to start collecting covers that you like in your genre. Make a little collection and a folder and start collecting them. But I want you to remember, you don't need to have your cover decided on before you hire a book cover designer or an illustrator. A designer will help you come up with the imagery that will best communicate your theme and overall message. Be flexible too. The collaboration and research process can lead in ways you probably never thought would lead to before. So I always tell my authors that you don't have to have all the answers for me. I really love the collaboration process, the back and forth process where we talk about things, and I like kind of digging into the deeper message, and then we talk about possible ideas to communicate that message. So, and a lot of other ideas might come up even in my own research when I'm researching stock photography or researching your competition. Some other ideas might come up there as well. So I really want you to be flexible and kind of just be willing to collaborate on ideas, those kind of things. So that is my entire presentation. If you have any questions, feel free to email me, find me on social media, and I can't wait to talk to you soon. Thanks, bye.